What's on your radar, Briahna?
Well, Sam Bankman-Fried, the infamous three-named fiend who was recently indicted by the DOJ, SEC, and CFTC on 8 counts, including wire fraud charges, was arrested on Tuesday, a day before he was scheduled to testify before Congress about the $8 billion collapse of his crypto exchange, FTX. Now, we've talked a great deal about the cause of the collapse and the bizarreness of SBF's behavior, both before and after the FTX collapse. The sleeping in a beanbag in the office, dressing like a college freshman on laundry day, and doing innumerable ill-advised media appearances, apparently with the blessing of his 2 Stanford law professor parents. Maybe this is why they advise doctors not to operate on family members. It seems that good judgment might not be able to overcome a parent's rose-colored glasses. But beyond the wire fraud charges that take up most of the indictment, SBF has also been charged with violating campaign finance laws, a charge that recalls the reporting we've done about SBF's prolific donations to the Democratic and Republican parties. Here's District Attorney Damian Williams explaining the campaign finance charge at a press conference earlier this week.
We charge that Bankman-Fried violated federal campaign finance laws by causing tens of millions of dollars in illegal campaign contributions to be made to candidates and committees associated with both Democrats and Republicans. These contributions were disguised to look like they were coming from wealthy co-conspirators, when in fact, the contributions were funded by Alameda Research with stolen customer money. And all of this dirty money was used in service of Bankman-Fried's desire to buy bipartisan influence and impact the direction of public policy in Washington.
Now, given how many people are touched by SBF's donations, from Maxine Waters to Mitch McConnell, everyone wants to know, did SBF's fraud extend to his philanthropic endeavors? And if so, which elected officials are going to have some explaining to do once they've been identified as a beneficiary of SBF's fraud? Congress's youngest member, Gen Zer Maxwell Frost, has already gotten ahead of the story, tweeting, "I never solicited a donation from SBF, but he did donate to my campaign. We are an operation that rejects corporate PAC money, which means we also reject stolen money." Going on to tweet that he will be donating SBF's contribution to an LGBT charity. But what about the other recipients of the $40 million SBF donated to this political cycle alone? Shontel Brown, centrist antagonist to Nina Turner's 2 congressional runs in Ohio's 11th district, received $1 million from SBF. Mitch McConnell's super PAC also received $1 million just weeks before FTX declared bankruptcy. President Biden received $5 million from the dethroned crypto king, while 2 PACs that fund House Republicans received nearly $1 million combined, according to FEC filings. What are the implications for recipients of these funds? Theodore Schleifer over at Puck recently interviewed SBF, shortly before his arrest, in fact, and published a neat bit of reporting digging into what the SDNY prosecutors might specifically allege beyond the relatively vague charges in the complaint. One theory involves something known as straw donations, which are donations made in the name of someone else in order to avoid contribution limits established by campaign finance laws, or to hide the identity of the donor. Remember, although there's been a heavy emphasis on SBF's prolific donations to the Democratic Party, SBF has been clear that he gave to Republicans in equal measure via dark money donations. Listen to this interview with Tiffany Fong.
They donated about the same amount to both parties this year. That was not generally known because despite Citizens United being literally the highest profile Supreme Court case of the decade and the thing everyone talks about when they talk about campaign finance, for some reason, in practice, no one can possibly fathom the idea that someone in practice actually gave dark. So, I don't know, all my Republican donations were dark. Because we won't see them. And the reason was not for regulatory reasons. It's because reporters freak the out if you donate to a Republican. They're all super liberal and didn't want to have that fight. So I just made all the Republican ones dark. But I was, second or third biggest Republican donor this year as well. But also it's all for the primaries. They didn't give anything in general elections. They don't give about general elections. It's not what matters. Like, it's the primaries where you have good candidates against bad candidates.
So SBF hid his Republican donations for optics reasons, knowing that the goodwill he was buying from the liberal media with his effective altruism shtick would be lost if he was exposed as donating to Republicans. But of course, he was donating to Republicans because, in his own words, this is what big moneyed interests do, give to both sides to ensure their agenda gets passed no matter who wins. Their agenda always wins, not yours. Of course, thanks to Citizens United, SBF's companies could give unlimited amounts to disclosed super PACs and undisclosed dark money groups. So according to speculation reported by Schleifer, the charges are more likely to be related to donations to campaigns and party committees, meaning principals, not just super PACs, may be implicated. Another theory reported in Puck is that SBF affiliates like executive Ryan Salame, who donated $24 million to GOP candidates this cycle, were basically giving away Alameda money. That Alameda was a direct donor hiding behind other names. Another theory is that FTX donors might have been immediately reimbursed by the business, which would violate the straw donor ban as well. You see why this is. You're not allowed to expense a political donation as an end run around the $3,000 federal contribution limits. Schleifer says this theory might explain why some not that rich individuals cut an unusually large number of political checks in recent years. Now, you should check out Schleifer's reporting for a full rundown of all the possible insider theories as to who might be implicated in the campaign finance violation charge. Note that the district attorney who led the press conference this week denied claims that the timing of the arrest had anything to do with preventing SBF from having to testify at yesterday's hearing in front of donation recipient Maxine Waters. But that doesn't mean that Maxine Waters doesn't have a dog in this fight. She chairs the Financial Services Committee, a powerful and much sought-after committee position in part because of the enormous sums of fundraising dollars that can be raised by committee members from the financial industry. SBF gave over $300,000 to 9 Financial Services Committee members. Last year, Waters gave a statement at a subcommittee on oversight and investigations in which she said the Financial Services Committee had, quote, begun a thorough examination of the marketplace. How much confidence did you have in that? Given the SBF money flowing through the committees, it doesn't exactly inspire a lot of confidence for me in a regulatory regime that would protect consumers. Nor does it make me optimistic about Waters' chances of coming out of this unscathed. One final important point to mention is that none of this would have happened if we, as a public, had done more to address the pernicious influence of dark money in American politics. I mean, remember how glibly SBF talked about his ability to exploit dark money donations in the clip I played of his interview with Tiffany Fong. He said, quote, despite Citizens United being literally the highest profile Supreme Court case of the decade, and the thing everyone talks about with campaign finance, for some reason, in practice, no one can possibly fathom the idea that someone actually gave dark. Good point, Sam. Why is that? And why are Democrats and Republicans doing something about it? Republicans have spent the last few weeks emphasizing SBF's connection with the Democratic Party, but have they proposed any campaign finance reform laws that would prevent the kind of influence-seeking SBF was engaged in? And do they have anything to say about the conservative Supreme Court justices that opened the door to this kind of dark money overreach to begin with? Rhode Island Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse repeatedly introduces a campaign finance bill called the Disclose Act to no avail, and most recently failed to pass the Senate's 60-vote filibuster threshold in September, ending in a 49-49 vote. Democrat Tammy Baldwin and Republican Mike Crapo were both absent. Whatever happened to the bipartisan push for campaign finance reform exemplified by John McCain and Rush Feingold's push back in the early aughts, back when Clinton was holding coffee clashes for likely donors and rewarding high rollers with sleepovers in the Lincoln bedroom? And why in this moment are progressive electeds not using the collapse of FTX as an opening to advance this all-important cause? One, I might add, which continues to enjoy bipartisan support. Lobbying dollars hit record highs this year, particularly in the healthcare sector and, yes, finance and real estate. If there's any question why you can't afford to be sick, pay your mortgage, or own a home in the first place, here's your answer. Now, liberals will tell you we can't have nice things because Republicans, or because we need some McKinsey elite like Buttigieg to figure out some technocratic solution to why you don't have enough money. And too many conservatives will tell you there's no solution at all. Just, pull at your bootstraps harder. But what if we know how to fix many of our country's problems and big money interests are simply in the way? The biggest story in the country is that some 30-year-old nepotism case has stolen billions of dollars and used it to try to buy a favorable regulatory regime so he can keep stealing while the government that's supposed to enforce the law looks the other way. And still, we see little to no legislative solutions being offered in this moment. The Lever recently reported on how crypto bros are even trying to get into the 401k game. Remember what happened when the housing market crashed pensions? Are we only seeing the tip of where this unholy union between corporations and government can take us? I think yes. But without pressure from the public for real reform, it's likely rather that we'll feel more acute, real pain soon enough. When will a bipartisan populist majority finally start complaining about this, the important stuff?
It's easy to get really discouraged when you see how in bed the regulators and the politicians and then the industries they're supposed to be overseeing are how financially entangled they are. It makes you really, what hope could there possibly be?
It's disgusting. I mean, look, it's not as though solutions aren't being offered up, but they just somehow aren't able to pass. The people who benefit from the system being the way it is manage somehow not to ever be able to get this legislation through Congress. And it reminds me of a conversation we were having yesterday about Kevin DeLeon and the lack of accountability in California after that leaked tape, and a lot of public pressure for him to resign, both from other politicians and from the public, and how there's really nothing you can do about it when we've kind of handed so much power over to these individuals without putting some accountability mechanisms in place, and when the democratic process doesn't work as it's supposed to so that people can actually vote these people out. No one is going to vote Maxine Waters out in her district because of some scandal over this. And no one is going to vote out any number of politicians on both sides of the aisle because they have failed to do anything about our corporate money in Congress capture problem.
Right. Yeah, it's a big issue. And the stakes have become very high for a lot of these industries, for financial interests. So they have a incredible incentive to spend tons and tons and tons of money to rig the system in their favor. Individual firms have that incentive to rig it against competitors. And it's difficult to regulate thoughtfully in a way that doesn't just entrench people already at the top, especially with an emerging industry like this. But it has been very interesting to see how many political people were paid off by it. I mean, not paid off unwittingly in some sense, but that makes a difference.
Yes.
And it was clear, like he was going to shepherd through. SBF was his ideal regulation of this space. There's no way that wasn't going to benefit him.
Money talks. It's why people give money. It's not altruistic. There's no such thing. We've learned nothing else from this escapade. It's that effective altruism is a ruse. It's for buying political influence. And I hope that people see that it's not about being a good person or a bad person. This is how our system is designed to operate. And if we want what people, the desires of the people to more accurately map onto what Congress is actually doing, then we're going to have to get to the bottom of this problem.
All right. Well, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.